Yet, her fingers still stretched out almost of their own volition, reaching anyway. Excalibur awaited her at the peaking, ready to be claimed. But as she drew closer, the knight soon came to realize the light had been just that. A lie. A trick. A deception. A ruse laid by the setting sun and her own faltering dream. For as her final steps finally brought her to the top of that rugged dome, when the dying light of the sun no longer overshadowed all that she saw, so too did she see that she'd been had. 'Twas a bitter and bleak thing now, a weapon stained with corruption to the hilt. Once holy in its splendor, now a mere shadow of its former self. Shadows that called to her, begging to be touched. Hell did you go? In the distance, she thought she heard Berserker calling for her, but his words fell on deaf ears. At last her feet fell still, and she gazed at this black and red blade. In the distance she thought she heard her a cry, the final rasping gurgle of her own death, reflected now in the depths of the blackened blade. Its shining surface rippled like water, and her own image gazed back at her. But older and warped, altered, poisoned golden eyes regarding her with a cruel calmness that held no place upon the original startled face. This was the face of a tyrant incarnate, a young woman clad in ebony wearing a horned black crown, a ruthless conqueror who devoured and destroyed all who stood before her. As she looked on in horror, the doppelganger mirrored her movements. "Who are you?" And so the shadow smiled. "I am you, foolish girl," came the scornful response. "All your doubts cast aside, all your hesitations erased. Come, take the sword, claim your birthright." Pain spiked through her skull, and her entire body quivered. Mordred staggered back, clutching at her head as the pain intensified. This was no dream. It was a nightmare. Her darkest fears brought to light, all but rising to the surface, even as she struggled to drown them. And if this was a nightmare, well, who was to say what might happen? The notion immediately set her on edge and sent her free hand flying to Clarence's hilt. Even now she half expected this ungodly mound of bodies to come clamoring back to life underfoot, a dozen decaying hands reaching for her, ready to drag her down for all her misdeeds, all her sins laid bare. Someday, when all was said and done, would she find herself among the corpses here? Impudent child. The familiar voice came on again, deadening her senses. "Must I do everything for you? Move." As if in a trance, she found herself starting forward. Trembling fingers reached out for that horrible weapon, ready and willing to... Don't touch it!
Mordred jumped as a hand came down her shoulder, strong fingers clenching her flesh through her own armor. Before she could even think to cry out, someone yanked her backwards, the motion of which caused her head to snap back and forth like a puppet severed from its strings. Sure enough, by the time the rebellious blonde turned her gaze, she found that Naruto had returned to her side in full health. Nay, more than that, his entire body seemed to shine like the sun itself, glowing as though lit from within. Keen red eyes narrowed upon Mordred, yet even as she opened her mouth to snap at him, her fellow blonde shouldered her aside and despite her protests, reached for the weapon.
Mordred slapped at Naruto's hand without thinking. "Hey!" she cried. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Dry look silenced her. "I could ask you the same thing. What were you doing?" His response made her wilt, nearly quelling all hope of defiance on her part. "I just wanted to touch it, all right? What's wrong with that?" "Everything!" "I may not be the sharpest tool in the shed." His voice emerged a low growl as he turned to face her fully. "But even I can tell that thing is bad news. It might even be the cause of this dream." Soft though his words were, they still hit Mordred like a physical slap in the face. What had she been thinking? When she risked a glance back at Excalibur, something in her very soul shuddered. Not wholly out of fear at that. She felt tainted just by looking at it, this bloody blade. Worse, a part of her wanted the power it offered, craved it as much as the recognition it would doubtlessly bring. No, wait. That wasn't right. She'd never ever wanted power solely for the sake of power. Had she been corrupted somehow? Was this a spell of some sort? Merely standing in the presence of this bleak artifact tempted her. She needed to back up, and so she stepped away. What are you going to do? What I do best. Those slitted orbs snapped back to the smoldering sword with a scowl. I'm going to break it. Much to her chagrin, Naruto didn't even deign to grasp the sword by its hilt, nor did he attempt to yank it free from the stained stone as one might expect. He simply reached out, seizing the naked steel by its edge. Then he began to squeeze with everything he had. Hairline fractures splintered forth from the center of his grip, black ichor spewing forth like blood, to stain his arm and draw a grunt from the whiskered warrior. Still he didn't relent, and soon enough, those tiny cracks widened into outright fissures as he continued to intensify his grip. An abrupt spike of pain shot through Mordred's temple as the sword, or whatever fell, force dwelt within cried out in abject rage. No! You fool! You're not the one I want. You know not what you've done. Release me at once. Shut up and let us go already. The retort was nearly instant. Now! A final clench of his fingers was all it took. That false blade shattered like so much kindling, and the world vanished with an almighty roar alongside it. Mordred squeezed her eyes shut against it and shielded her face with an armored arm. All in vain. There was no pain here, only a searing rush of light that vanished as quickly as it had come, leaving her reeling. In a brief bout of blindness she stumbled, and someone, Naruto, quickly caught her. Though judging by the slew of vitriol that followed, he found himself just as lost as she. Oh, what fresh hell is this? I thought we were done. With those words, her vision came swimming back, albeit slowly. Naruto considered her words for a moment, heedless of his ruined palm. He didn't even deign a passing glance for his injured hand as they surveyed their surroundings. The merest flex of his fingers, and he was whole once more. As ever, the sight sent a small chill through her. Despite his affable nature, this really was a monster. He'd survived being skewered with sword and stakes alike, lost an arm and more, yet each time he came crawling right out of the grave for more. Truly a zombie in her eyes, though she didn't mean the term as an insult. Anyone capable of regenerating to that extent could laugh off a maimed hand or two. If he wasn't so damn affable, she'd be afraid to fight him in the first place. But when she looked back, the battlefield was nowhere to be seen. When met with that hellish landscape, the stone-gray corridor in which they found themselves proved positively tame by comparison. Downright boring, even. Were it not for the large wooden door lingering at the head of the hall, she might have thought this a prison of some sort. Regardless, the sudden change of scenery didn't sit well with her. Mordred's right eye began to twitch with ill-suppressed intent. Great! You just had to break the sword, didn't you? We could have made it talk or something, you know, says the girl who was about to take it. Naruto's elbows sought and found her ribs, drawing an annoyed growl as they started forward in lockstep. You're welcome. I'm sorry, all right? Exasperated beyond measure. The knight felt her ears burn as she tossed her arms up. I wasn't thinking. Now where are we? Your guess is as good as mine. Still, in any case, he snarked with a shallow bow. Ladies first. His rebuttal earned him a playful shove. Walk, Whiskers. All right, I'm going. Geez. His words trailed off as Mordred shoved the door open, and a wave of realization struck her. Not again. Gone was the hellish ruin of the battlefield, those moldering mounds of bodies piled as high as the eye could see. In its place, Mordred found herself in a hell of her own making. Every inch of it was engraved into her mind, an old wound that continued to fester no matter the treatment. Taking a moment to hazard a glance for her surroundings, the knight felt her stomach plummet. What the... fuck? Reverberating through the great gilded halls in which they found themselves. Her words echoed back endlessly to mock her, as did the sight that greeted her eyes. This was clearly the foyer of Camelot, and yet, Not. No. This was impossible. It must be. She knew these hallowed halls, just as she knew the room and the stairs within. Spirits, she knew what she would find when she looked down the hall, who she expected to find sitting that familiar throne in all of its gilded glory. But the throne lay empty, and in that moment she became aware of an unfamiliar weight rested against her head. A weight that hadn't been there before. A weight that wasn't her helmet. Concern fell to horror, then dread. No. This was another trick. A dream. An illusion. It had be. A soundless roar built in the back of her ears. With each passing moment she felt her pulse begin to quicken, like the drums of a great army come to slaughter all she held dear. Naruto must have seen it too, because she felt his hand on her shoulder. Just calm down. Trembling fingers reached upright to find what she already knew in her heart to be there. Fumbling palms pulled it down, cradling its weight as thought it were the Holy Grail itself. She didn't want to look, but she had to. No, she must. Her eyes beheld the crown, that great glittering jewel in her hands, the same that father had worn, and the sight pulled all her world down around her ears. She wasn't meant to wear this. It was too much. Whatever manner of illusion this was, whatever temptation had been concocted by some caster who knew what it threatened to push her over the edge into madness. You've done well, Mordred. The poor girl jerked upright like a scalded cat as a fresh voice echoed within the throne room. Hey, what now?
Her entire body threatened to creak as she turned on, joints made stiff with surprise.
Artoria Pendragon smiled serenely back at her from the throne. Hadn't it been vacant before, gazing down at them in all her splendor? Mordred's jaw popped open. As she looked on, her father rose in a single movement of liquid grace, and descended the steps toward them. Mordred took the chance to steal a glance back at Berserker, only to find his expression set in stone. He gave her the merest nudge with his arm, and flicked 3 of his fingers in a sharp, slashing motion. Perhaps in some kind of code she didn't understand, but otherwise refused to respond. In that brief lapse, Mordred turned to face her. Father, what the hell is this? Come, sit the throne. Her progenitor beckoned. It is your right. She couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't even bring herself to breathe.
Here was all she could have wanted, ever wished for, her every dark thought realized here in this moment of temptation. Father's praise, a crown she'd never thought to wish for. Spirits, a throne, and yet, as much as she might wish it were real, as much as she longed for this more than anything else, she couldn't. Something felt off, wrong. Father's words were too simple, too stilted, her piercing green eyes devoid of that peculiar spark that so defined her. Yet she wanted to see, wanted to believe, wanted to hold on to this moment, even if she couldn't.
Berserker's soft, irritated sigh shattered the silence forevermore. That's not what she wants. You're out of touch. Father glowered at Berserker. Silence, churl. She has no need for one such as you. Mordred physically flinched against the rebuke. That's not what I...
All right, I've heard enough. Naruto bodily interposed himself between the two of them before they could come to blows. Who are you really? No more tricks.
Artoria tilted her head.
Tricks, you say?
Enough! Naruto's voice, normally so calm and serene, suddenly boomed like thunder in the vaulted chamber, eliciting a flinch from all parties present. With the briefest baring of teeth, his body burst back into that strange golden light again, while his roar shook the earth and shattered windows alike. Startlingly, he recovered his composure just as quickly. I am a patient and tolerant man, but one thing I won't tolerate is a lie, least of all to those precious to me. A lone, clawed finger jabbed forward at the holy warrior. Tell us the truth. To Mordred's dismay, Father giggled. Rude, aren't you? Father? It was like casting a stone into a pond, as the Knight of Treachery looked on in mute confusion and horror. The laughing form of Saber began to shiver and sit, doubling over as though she were in great pain. Her body spasmed and shook like a leaf in the wind, both her armor and dress falling aside to be replaced by garments of the finest ebony as she continued to wriggle and writhe. Yet her countenance barely changed. Similar, yet a creature of such contrast that one might yet wonder how the two could ever be the same. Mordred felt her mouth twist into a grimace as she looked on helplessly, watching the change subside in a swirl of inky smoke. The dreamlike countenance of father was no more.
And so my own child turns against me. A bitter sigh greeted them in its place as the impostor palmed their pace. What a pity, I had such high hopes for you, Mordred, I suppose.
In her place stood a striking young woman with long flaxen hair and a body that exuded sheer sin. Clad in a flowing black gown that left precious little to the imagination, both her navel and abdomen were left exposed, an eerie reminder of her true base nature. Though a bleak black veil coupled by a crown shielded the impostor's face, she knew her at a glance, and it was that knowledge that twisted her heart with revulsion. Of course she knew her. How could she not? How could she forget? This woman, this witch, the one person whom she loved and hated with impossible spite. In that moment, rage burst forth like a geyser. I'll simply have to break you. You, she lunged. Why, you rotten piece of Morgan Le Fay granted her offspring a small scowl and wave of before she could speak. Clarence howled through the air and tasted naught but stone. Her mother's body left to ripple like a mere mirage. Without missing so much as a beat, that veiled gaze turned toward Berserker, those full lips quirking in a scowl. And as for you, Berserker, don't worry. I'll take extra special care of you when we meet. Laughter tore in Mordred's head from the dark, a cold, cruel declaration, utterly void of kindness or conscience. And she knew no more. No! Mordred woke with a soundless scream. Heart racing, pulse pounding in her veins like the drums of a great hunt. It was all she could do not to draw her blade. She'd heard it. Father's voice, cold and cruel, mocking her. But it hadn't been father.
Hadn't it?
Rising from a tangled web of dreams, the Knight of Rebellion blearily blinked the gunk out of her eyes, banished the fear from her heart, and uttered a jaw-popping yawn. As she struggled to stretch her limbs to their limit, a small part of her debated simply drifting off again, but true to its nature, her mind rebelled at the notion, and her aqua orbs, sharpened as a spark of awareness, slowly flared back into life within their depth. Here in the crypt, there weren't any windows, so she was not permitted even a glimpse of sunlight. Yet her body recognized that it was well past dawn all the same. Well, that was a good nap. Wasn't often that she got to take one of those these days. Nightmare aside, wasn't it? She'd actually managed to recover a fair bit of energy from her ill-fated snooze. Damn, but it felt good to sleep out of her armor for once. Almost made her feel alive again. Still, no point in putting it off any longer. Time to rise and face the day, as the saying went. So why did it feel as though she were forgetting something terribly important? Wasn't it? Gah, so annoying. Guess I should get up, she groaned, biting back another yawn. Where the hell did everyone go? Valiantly, the blonde attempted to do just that. Really, truly, she did. Scarce did she attempt to rise, however, than an arm yanked her right back down again with impossible force. Her head bounced off something that wasn't stone, eliciting a noise of confusion from the boisterous knight, as her body betrayed her wishes. Someone hadn't tried to bash her skull in, rather. She found herself trapped. What in the world? Aghast, she tossed her head and looked down to find the source. There was an arm locked around her waist. Naruto's head had taken up a perch on her navel and simultaneously laid claim to her right arm. Meanwhile, Atalanta's slumbering visage rested snugly on her opposite shoulder. Why was she purring? And her lap. How in the hell did Jackie manage to curl up like that? No, wait a minute. This didn't make any sense. This shouldn't even be possible at all. Naruto had been sandwiched between the three of them. She clearly recalled that, drifting off on his shoulder. So why was she in the middle, eh? Oi. As if sensing that very thought, the bastard zombie began to stir against her. He nuzzled his cheek against hers. Her eyes began to roll. He wasn't gonna be. He was gonna. Warm lips alighted against her cheek for the most fleeting of instants, and a deep, full-body flush overtook her from head to toe. To be fair, Mordred tried to hold on. Tried not to lash out for fear of waking him as much as the others. She really, truly tried her best, but she'd never been kissed before. Gibberish tumbled forth from her mouth. Whether he was awake or not, that didn't matter. There was, and could only ever be, one response from the night of rebellion. Her cheeks turned an even more flush shade of scarlet as the rest of her blood rushed to her head. And then... Saber of Blue Artoria. Caster of Blue Morgan. Assassin of Blue, First Hassan. Archer of Blue, Artemis. Rider of Blue, Lancer of Blue. Berserker of Blue. We are more than servants, you fool. We are gods compared to them. We are the wolves. They are the sheep. This world is ours to rule. See, that's where you're wrong. I don't want to rule anything. These peaceful days, they are my kingdom, my friends. They are my people. I have no need of riches, for their joy is my wealth. Yan. Argument.
Revelations Part 1.
A day off, just like that. Jean hoisted her heavy tome with menacing intent. Say it again. All right, Naruto laughed, flailing his hands. Take it easy. I was only joking. Berserkers did not show their fear. Fear was weakness. Fear was the enemy. Fear meant another bump on the head. Naruto was many things, but despite all appearances to the contrary, he certainly wasn't stupid. When he received this news, he chose to take it in stride rather than kick up a further fuss. After all, why wouldn't he? Even servants needed a bit of respite every once in a while. The two of you went ballistic back there. Shizugu reminded them patiently, placing a hand on his shoulder. I can't speak for Archer's master, but we need to recover our mana. We're both running really low. Hey, we won last night, didn't we? Mordred's head popped over his other shoulder with a cheery grin. That's what counts, doesn't it? Sure, if nearly killing the two of us was your goal all along. Shizugu withdrew his hand and crossed both arms before his chest. Nice job on that, by the way. Behind him, Mordred flinched as if she'd been struck. Wah! Yes, by all means. Jean's smile was just too smug for Naruto liking. Tell us your grand plan, both of you. Elucidate. Hey, it's not like that, Naruto whined like a child caught with their hand in the cookie jar. We didn't mean to. Shizugu and Rum exchanged a flat look. No, you just meant to drain us dry. Both blondes wilted like a pair of kicked puppies. We're sorry. That was a low blow, and both Saber and Berserker knew it. Just as each knew they deserved the unspoken rebuke. Everyone, with the exception of a still sullen Jack, had fought last night to the best of their ability. Harsh words were spoken. Swords had been drawn. Arrows fell like rain. Noble phantasms were unleashed. Nothing had been held back. It had been a battle for the ages between 6 servants. And the Masters of Red had paid dearly for it. Naruto could see it in the way they held themselves. The way Jean leaned against Shizugu just so as she glowered at them. She was much recovered from the battle. But even he could see she looked haggard, as though she'd not gotten enough sleep. Her normally pristine visage was still pale with a low fever, leaving her hair in disarray. Kairi held himself somewhat better than Naruto's master, if only because Mordred hadn't been quite as liberal with her mana. Jean had borne the brunt of a berserker in all its fury and nearly died. It was a sour thought, one he didn't like. He'd have to take precautions against that next time. Unfortunately, that still left a certain saber clinging to his shoulders like a limpet. "What are you looking at me like that for, zombie?" Mordred frowned. "Why the long face, huh?" Naruto reached around and flicked her forehead with a bemused smirk. "I didn't realize you cared this much." His words were the nail and his grin, the hammer to ram them home. She sputtered and let go, thankfully without a slap this time. As things stood, his cheek was still smarting from Mordred's explosive outburst earlier this morning. Not that he much minded the red handprint she'd left behind. If anything, he bore it like a badge of honor. Pain was an old friend to him by this point. He endured every injury he received with pride, not for his superhuman endurance or any sort of masochism. On the contrary, his reasons were selfish. He took hits he didn't have to because they reminded him he was alive, that his second life hadn't yet come to an end. Still, he did wonder why she'd clobbered him. He hadn't riled her up much. Was it something he'd done in his sleep? Must have been. For some reason or another, Saber had woken up, taken one good look at his face, shrieked, and slapped him silly. Bloody warrior women were all Sabers like that. Almost made a man wonder. Oddly enough, he didn't much mind it. Perhaps that was the madness enhancement talking. As he was now, he was simply devoid of restraint and incapable of holding a grudge for long. And speaking of grudges, a familiar flicker of green in his peripherals reminded him of an errant archer and the gulf between them. Atalanta flinched aside when he tried to look at her and averted her gaze, fluffy ears flattening against her emerald green tresses as she wrought her hands against one another. Naruto fought down a flinch of his own as she tried to tuck herself into a darkened corner just to avoid looking at him. Were it not for Mordred heading her off at the pass earlier, he suspected Archer would have bolted by now. It hurt to see her like this, like a shell of her former self. She looked small, wounded. Where was the proud huntress he remembered? No. He wasn't having it. Absolutely not. "All right," he shrugged helplessly to himself. "I guess we're doing this now." With a final nod to Jean and Sisegu, the blonde berserker moved to intercept his fellow servant. Of course, Archer saw him coming and tried to make for the exit, but that only strengthened his resolve. Berserker blocked her, caught her by the wrist, and pulled her deeper into the crypt. Thankfully, Saber appeared to be very much preoccupied with her master. And assassin! He never knew where she was hiding until she wanted to be found. Ruler was surely hiding in one of the rooms here somewhere, but she too had chosen to make herself scarce. That suited him just fine. This had been a long time coming. "Let go of me, Berserker." Naturally, she struggled. "Nope. I mean it. Release me," Atalanta hissed, straining at his wrist. "Nope. You're going to make this difficult, aren't you?" She wilted in his grasp. "Yup." In short order, Naruto found what he was looking for. An empty adjacent chamber with no one occupying it. No one living, at least. He ducked into it and dragged an irritated Atalanta behind him before sealing the door with a thin curtain in their wake. It was a musty room that hadn't seen use in years, the only illumination a small smokeless brazier flickering in a forgotten corner. Sisegu must have lit it sometime during the night. Its faint light cast flickering shadows across the huntress's face when he released her, playing tricks on his eyes. Were those tears he'd seen just now? No, surely not. Atalanta didn't cry. "So," he began, for lack of anything else to say, "is there a reason you tried to run back there?" She hung her head, ears still drooping. "I don't deserve to be here." "None of that." Naruto stepped in and flicked her forehead, drawing a hiss from the huntress and a glower that revealed red-rimmed eyes. Oh gods, she had been crying after all. "Ignore. She'll shoot me if I mention it. We went over this last night." "You made a mistake," he said instead. "It happens to the best of us." "My mistake nearly killed you." "Ah, so that was her hang-up. You lost yourself back there because of my own selfish actions." And Naruto tilted his head aside. And it was the wrong thing to say, judging by the twitch of her tail. You would have died. I've died before. Don't see what the problem is. He shrugged. I'm a berserker, remember? It's my job to rush in and get hurt. Atalanta sucked in a sharp breath through her teeth as she grossly mistook his intentions. Are you saying no one would miss you if you died? She wouldn't slap him, she told herself. She categorically refused. She didn't dare after what she'd seen last night. Galling as it might be, a small part of her feared the monster behind the man. Not his face, never his face in 1,000 years, but the quiet threat of power lurking behind it. Because it wasn't his fault. Naruto's unique brand of madness enhancement manifested itself outside of combat as much as in. She'd known him to lack common sense, but she hadn't realized it was quite this bad. Did he even realize what he just said? No. She would take a deep breath and respond calmly, not with emotion, but rationality. I would. The words betrayed her regardless, tearing themselves out of the archer with a snarl. Mordred would. Jack would. So would Jean. How can you be so cavalier about this? Blue eyes widened and she saw the moment a sliver of sanity pushed itself through his madness. He'd formed bonds with each of them. Jack was like a daughter to him. Mordred was... well, she wasn't quite sure what the rowdy saber was to him. But she was something... how could he have forgotten something like that? And to her, for all his madness and insanity, he was warm to her. A beacon of light and hope in the everyday. Someone who took in children for no other reason than to raise them. He was her ally. Her hope? No. She refused to finish that thought, for it meant breaking her oath. Haven't you already? A small, traitorous voice whispered in the back of her head. You care for him. More than you should. Atalanta stamped it into oblivion. You're right. Her ears perked up. Pardon. I said you're right. Naruto palmed his face and shook his head, one eye flashing red in the firelight. I shouldn't have said it like that, but you do have a place here. And I'm not trying to die, you know. Good, the huntress huffed, crossing both arms beneath her breasts. I would be very cross with you if you said otherwise. And what does your master think of that? I wouldn't know, she confessed candidly. I have yet to meet them. I only received the occasional command from him. Perhaps he wishes to remain hidden. Now there was a matter Naruto would have liked to dig into. He chose not to. She knew it by his narrowed eyes. There were questions he wanted to ask her. So many questions. But he held himself back. Not out of any sense of decorum, she knew he had none, but because she could see such pointed inquiries would hurt her. For the first time since she'd met him, Berserker held himself back. Good. He parroted back at her, and her lips twitched into a smile. We're partners. He said the words without a hint of guile. We gotta look after each other, you know? But more than that. His hands fell on her shoulders, locking her in place. I know you're not happy with me. I get that. I may not be the sharpest tool in the shed, but I know why you're upset. He muttered the latter, turning his head aside in the dim lightning when she scowled at him. We're still working the kinks out of our alliance here. It's going to be tough for a little bit now that we've taken out a member of the Black faction. I'm not gonna lie, they're gonna be pissed. Her ears drooped. You're not the best at giving speeches, Berserker. Oh, hush! Naruto butted his head against hers lightly, causing her to flush. I'm not finished. Like I said, there are going to be tough times ahead. Hard and demanding times. But I'd like to think we might be able to do it without more bloodshed. He paused there, likely gauging her guarded expression before he dared tread that path. Maybe you think changing things in an honest, direct way is too hard. But I don't agree with that. It's just... how do I explain this? When the brash berserker leaned back and shook his head, she followed, watching him like a hawk as he thumbed his chin. I want to change the things we see before us, he began slowly. Little by little, even one thing at a time. until we've made this world a better place. What do you think? Atalanta dared a nod. On that much they agreed. But it also brought with it a question. You never did mention your wish. If I'm to stay, tell me. What is it you want from this war? My wish. Naruto blinked, momentarily balking at her phrasing. You know, until recently I really hadn't thought of it. I used to be fine with whatever my master wanted, you know. I'm happy to be alive again. He gave a helpless shrug. Her wish could be my wish. But now, I think I have one. He leaned away and scratching at a whiskered cheek. Promise me you won't laugh. Atalanta would never laugh at someone's wish. She said as much. All right. Stern shoulders drooped and then Naruto barreled right in. It may sound stupid, but I want this world to be a place where people can smile and enjoy their lives. Those bright eyes held hers, filled with burning intensity. Not just people, but servants, too. Not a perfect world, not even an ideal one. I want us to find common ground. That's all well and good, Atalanta shook her head, but you still haven't told me what you want. That's just it. Quick as a flash, he darted back to her again. I want a world where Mordred can be the king she's meant to be. I want a world where Jackie has a happy family. I want a world where ruler stops chasing after duty and learns what it means to live again. I want a world where every child achieves their dreams. He paused yet again, watching her ears perk up in curiosity. I want a world where servants can come and go as they please, without trying to kill each other. Is that wrong? When I was alive, I died of old age, without regrets, surrounded by friends and family. The admission was frank, startling even now. There's so much wrong with this world. I want to fix it. I have to fix it, or I'll be filled with regret all over again. Naruto edged forward into her personal space, and this time Atalanta found she couldn't bring herself to retreat when he spoke again. But for that to happen, someone needs to win this war. There was a fervor there that she hadn't seen before, a humble charisma that warmed her blood. And for that, I need Mordred's help. I need Jack's help. I need Jan's help. More importantly, I need your help. Her world was spinning. She couldn't think straight. It was all too much. Too sudden. Her heart wasn't prepared for this. Her eyes fluttered shut of their own accord. Then her took her hands in his and held them to his chest. Will you lend me your strength, Atalanta? Atalanta went terribly still. She creaked an eye open. Nothing else came. No kiss. Nothing. It should have been a relief. And yet it left her bitter. Longing. Even. By the gods, Berserker had her, and he didn't even realize what he'd done. If she refused now after that speech, she'd sound like a clod. If she turned her back on him after listening to that heartfelt wish, she would feel far worse. She couldn't do that to him, no matter how irritated she was at the moment. She didn't even know why. Lies. Of course she did. When had she come undone? She didn't know, and it frightened her. More so her answer to his question. I will. Perhaps were Naruto of sound body and mind, he might have realized the effect his words had on her just now, might have seen her resolve, her oath, fracture more than ever before. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on one's point of view, Naruto missed the small traitorous twitch of her lip in his laughter. Ah, the blessed release of insanity. She envied him it. Great, he grinned. Now let's go track down the others and, Auntie, Mordred said, we get to go outside. Yeah, I. Instead, he stumbled half a step as a smaller, more familiar weight latched onto his shoulders and laid claim to them as though they were her own personal throne. Despite himself, the Berserker felt a small smile pluck at the corner of his mouth. Not a heartbeat later, he saw a pair of familiar hazel eyes swept into his peripherals from the right. Well, someone's awake, he hummed and patted her head. Morning, Jack. Did you sleep well? Her head bobbed in a nod, ashen hair swaying from the motion as a cherubic smile bloomed across her face. You were warm, Daddy. Odd how something like that made him blush. He'd thrown crass insults and flirted horribly with nearly every woman he'd met. Yet the simple affection of a child was enough to ruffle his feathers. Atalanta made a cooing noise somewhere out of his sight, and Mordred absolutely cackled in the distance. Traitors, the both of them. He'd have his revenge. Jack. The little assassin perked up. Yes, Papa. Go. Find Jan and tackle her. If we have to suffer, so does she. Jack's smile was all too evil. She launched herself into the crypt like an arrow of black leather. 0-0. Their excursion proved to be something of a torrid affair. Juxtaposed to the idea of being split up after yesterday's disaster, the servants of Red chose to stick together rather than go their separate ways for the day. With both Jean and Sisigu under the watchful eye of a reinforced clone, the rest of them sallied forth into Trifas. While there was no battlefield nor blood to be shed, each went forward with just as much determination. Even Ruler had been roped into their shenanigans, her protest proving remarkably admittedly feeble by comparison. Had that been the end of it, perhaps the town proper might have emerged unscathed. It was not. In short order, Naruto realized their dilemma. Casual wear or no, they were all servants. Warriors of times long past, whose sole purpose was to fight and die. In a war for their master's bidding. Servants were meant to be warriors. To fight, and nothing else. They weren't expected to actively engage with the common folk. There was no vacation time, no hazard pay, and they certainly didn't get days off. Which brought them to their current dilemma. No one knew what to do. Naruto did, but he wasn't rightly sure his idea of a vacation qualified here. Running laps around the town or beating a wooden stump to death probably wasn't conducive to a good time. Still, for reasons he wholly failed to understand, he'd been elected the leader of this merry band of misfits for the day. Meaning he was in charge. Him. A mad berserker without so much as a lick of common sense. This could only end well. Worse, the tension from last night was still present.
Mordred was angry at Atalanta, which meant Atalanta wasn't talking to Mordred. Which meant Jack wasn't talking to Atalanta. That left her to gravitate to him and Jean, and while the latter was more than happy to talk with the harried huntress, it still left Naruto in the awkward position of trying to keep Saber an assassin from contemplating murder. Jack would do it, too. Jack's attire instantly drew untoward attention as well, which meant she had to wear her cloak. Which drew more attention. Clothes were required, and that was a can of worms he'd have to deal with later sometime between keep them from each other's throats. It was like herding cats.
Have none of you ever had a day off? He flung up his arms. Ever? Seriously. Four heads shook in a unison so flawless it may as well have been rehearsed. Naruto felt his jaw click open and he guffawed. No, of course they hadn't. He was familiar enough with Mordred's legend, and the horrible childhood she'd had. Jack hadn't even experienced so much as a single but of happiness from her life to the moment of her death. Atalanta and Jen. He drew something of a blank there. Gulping, he trod on that proverbial landmine and asked the question he really should not have. What the heck did you lot do for fun when you were alive anyway? Ooh. Jack's tiny arm shot up like a bolt as she began bouncing in place, cloak fluttering with every hop. Me, pick me, Daddy, over here.
Jean's hand flew to her mouth to hide a small smile. Mordred didn't even bother to conceal hers. Atalanta looked like she was about to pass out before the sheer unadulterated cuteness that was Jack the Ripper. Naruto held himself only half a step behind her in that regard. How could someone so tiny be so deadly and adorable in the same moment?
Alright, I'll bite. He indicated the smallest among them with a lone finger. What do you enjoy, Jackie? Killing people, she replied guilelessly. Can we do that, Daddy? Everyone, gurgled. No. Naruto slammed his arms into an X-shaped formation. Not that. None of that. Next? Aw. Her shoes scuffed against the ground as she pouted. What the hell? I'll bite. Mordred raised her arm next, though she didn't have to. How about a brawl? Fighting's fun, right? Better, but still no. Naruto vetoed her with a shake of the head. We can't afford to start throwing noble phantasms around like that in public. Spoil sport. Atalanta hesitated, but offered a gloved palm. Perhaps a hunt, then? She ventured the words almost timidly. Surely that would be a productive use of our time. I'd be all for that, but we're in a town, remember? There really isn't anything to hunt here. And no, blue eyes narrowed when she opened her mouth to speak again. Before you ask, we are not going to spend the entire day adopting every orphan in every orphanage. That wouldn't be fair to Jackie, said Assassin, all but tucked herself into his side with a pleased sigh at that. Besides, how would we even feed them all? All eyes turned to Jean. I didn't have much opportunity for games in my youth, she shrugged helplessly. I wouldn't know what to suggest.
Was it a sin to pity a saint? If so, Naruto was the greatest sinner in the world right now. At least the others by their own warped definitions knew how to enjoy themselves. Jean didn't, she'd never had the chance. A poor farm girl who received a revelation, who fought a war, who died for her beliefs. Well, that simplified things, then. If their traditional pastimes were out, they'd just have to find new ones for the day.
That settles it. Puffing out his chest, the blonde planted both hands on his hips and leaned forward. I, the great Berserker, will teach you what it means to have a good time. And no, not like that. Quick as a flash, he created 4 clones. We'll each pair off to find something to do, he instructed, watching their roving eyes like a hawk. Then we'll meet back here in the square by dusk and return to the crypt. Sound fair? Jack raised a hand again. It was all Naruto could do not to smile. What will we be doing, Daddy? Ack, too pure. He failed utterly. That'll be a surprise. I've got something different planned for each of you. Mordred frowned thoughtfully. Since when can you make that many copies? You can thank Ruler for that. Naruto preened and rolled his shoulders, reveling in the harsh pop. His joints produced as much as the soreness that fled from them. Her command spell did something to me the other night, I suppose. It wasn't a lie. He really did feel more like himself since Jane had slapped him with her command. As if some of the shackles off his class had fallen away. Not some, not many. Not enough, but he'd take what he could get for now. I feel more like my old self now. Just a bit. Thanks for that, by the way. Jen flushed, but it was Mordred who needed no further encouragement. I called dibs. In a bold bolt of red saber shot forward and laid claim to the original's arm. His arm. Her Cheshire grin as she beamed up at him reminded Naruto of a cat who'd caught the canary and slaughtered its entire race. She didn't so much latch onto his limb as she did clamp down on it. Even with his absurd strength, he'd have a hard time prying himself free of that grip. Nor was he the only one who noticed, for a chorus of indignant squawks arose the moment she touched him. Hey! Cheer! That's entirely unfair. Now, Naruto admonished them. That's not fair, is it? Here, let's shuffle. That way no one will know who is who. Fine, she groused. Bloody zombie. At his urging, Mordred reluctantly released him, then took a step back. As one, the clones and their creator moved rapidly, obscuring one another from view. It was a simple series of shuffling movements, each designed to distract as much as divert their attention. It worked, too. With moments Mordred's eyes all but rolled in her head, while Jean's lips formed a thin line of displeasure as she lost sight. Of the unlikely quartet, only Jack and Atalanta were able to track his movements, and it was the latter whose eyes never left his for a moment. Right then, the brash berserker clapped his hands as they came to a halt. Pick your poison, ladies. Mordred claimed the leftmost clone. Jan reluctantly selected the rightmost doppelganger. Jack looked left. Jack looked right. Jack gave up and went for the middle. Atalanta sniffed softly. bright eyes flashing. She'd waited till last, and for good reason. Her feline ears twitched just so, and she took a step forward to loosely wrap her arm in his. Anyone else would have missed that twitch? It was just a touch. Just a hair. Naruto saw it and knew she'd cheated. Be it by hearing or scent or something else he didn't understand, she'd successfully managed to track his movements and find him hiding amongst the copies. As expected of a huntress, Naruto wisely chose not to challenge her. Her eyes found his anyway. Naruto quirked a golden brow. Heartbeat, she elucidated for him. You have one. Your clones don't. Really? He'd never thought about that one. Great, Naruto said instead. Everyone got a buddy. Now the plan is Wait a moment. A new voice interjected before he could continue. I believe you've forgotten something. Naruto didn't so much twitch as he did sigh as someone called out to them. I swear to God, that better not be an enemy servant. Oh, someone's cranky this morning. He turned and flung his gaze outward, mildly chuffed to find the streets nearly devoid of any hapless passerby. Had anyone else been present, they might well have noticed his earlier shenanigans. If anything, they seemed almost unnaturally empty, as though they'd been turned away by a bounded field. As such, Naruto nearly didn't recognize Semiramis. With her hair down and her ears hidden beneath those ebony tresses, she looked much the same as any human. She'd even gone so far as to remove the spikes from her hands and wear a modified version of her dress with a thigh-high slit, her shoulders hidden by a black shawl. Somehow she'd all but managed to conceal her presence entirely from them. Even at this range, he couldn't sense her. Though she clearly lurked well within his peripherals, her aura was masked from him even now. Yet, there could be no hiding her eyes. Golden orbs like that weren't everyday fare, and no amount of sorcery or spellbinding on her part could ever conceal them. Mordred growled something untoward and nearly drew her sword. It was only a pointed look that prevented violence. Even then, still looked fit to shuck her leather jacket, don her armor and attack, were it not for Assassin's escort. Assassin wrinkled her nose at him as she came closer, heels clicking against the street. You're lively for a dead man. She wanted to play that way, did she? Fine. He could snark with the best of them, as Semiramis well remembered. What can I say? Naruto sketched a shallow nod. I live to please, milady. To what do we owe the honor? I wish to make certain you survived, she sniffed. My curiosity is satisfied. I will now depart. Aye. Clone popped into existence behind her and seized her wrist. Nope. You're a part of this now, like it or not. Wah! Her companion was another matter entirely, because he chose that moment, nay, that precise sliver of a second when Semiramis turned pink, to start laughing. He had the eyes of a raptor, and unlike Assassin, he'd made no effort to conceal who or what he was behind, the trappings of humanity. Polished armor of the finest silver shone against black fabric, alongside matching greaves and boots, all wrapped up in a loose orange scarf at the chest. His hair was certainly spiky and green, lots of green. Wow, you really weren't kidding. Pearly white teeth flashed in a dashing grin. He's got your number, eh? Ryder, Semiramis bit out with a smile that promised pain. How cruel of you to keep me in the dark. Did you know this would happen? As all interested parties looked on, said Ryder sputtered and flung up his hands. Now wait just a second. Don't give me that look, you. I didn't know. I swear. You needn't be so hard on him, Assassin of Red. Oh ho! Semiramis zeroed in on Ruler's retort like a vulture. And the little mouse speaks. I thought you were mute. Jen muttered something cross that had Semiramis sniping back at her in an instant. Naruto flicked a thought to one of his clones, and the doppelganger nimbly intercepted them before they could come to blows. Crisis averted. Whatever argument they were having likely involved a certain priest, and he wanted not part of it. Better to have someone else deal with it, even if it was an extension of himself. He'd deal with the memories later. Just the thought of dealing with schemes so akin to Madara still made him more than a little skittish. Achilles. In the end, it was Atalanta who gave the new servant's identity away, and thankfully distracted him. She released Naruto's arm, but only just, her hip brushing against his as she stepped forward. "What are you doing here?" Sure enough, the embattled servant latched onto those words like a lifeline, and all but blurred to her side. To escape Semiramis? Jack was only half a step behind, detaching herself from her chosen copy to stand beside the huntress. Said blonde watched with a bemused look, fighting and failing to hide their smile. For all her crankiness, Jackie was a curious soul, and not one known to hold grudges for long. "Are you a good guy?" she asked, cocking her little head to one side like a curious kitten. "Or a bad guy?" Achilles chuckled softly. "Well, aren't you adorable? What if I say I'm a bad guy, little miss?" Her golden eyes flashed. Then, "I'll kill you. I won't let you hurt. Anti-Atalanta." Mordred clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle a snicker, as did Naruto. Atalanta's reaction proved more profound. She made a noise that might have been a groan or a hiss. Naruto thought it sounded like a squeak. Her face turned scarlet as she visibly swayed on her feet. Achilles forcibly bit his lip, though his shoulders quivered in silent laughter. Jack completely misunderstood it and kicked his shin. "I won't let you hurt, Auntie Mordred either." Mordred squawked. "Since when am I an ant?" That tore it. The dam broke and both Naruto and Achilles toppled backward with a whoop of laughter. Atalanta and Mordred whined. No one was foolish enough to challenge them beyond that. "So, you're the one Sis has her eye on, eh?" Achilles eyed him up and down as he climbed to his feet. "I like the look of you. Bite me." All eyes turned toward Ryder at once. "Isn't that a little sudden?" Naruto croaked. "Come on, don't be like that. It's just a spar." The man beamed pleasantly, planting an armored hand against his hip. "No noble. Phantasms, no tricks, no weapons. Just fists. I want to see what you're made of. You've got to be something if Sis likes you this much." Atalanta facepalmed. "I keep telling you, it's not like that." Naruto didn't feel the slightest urge to give this man what he wanted. Not in the least. He barely knew Achilles beyond his legend, though the man seemed friendly enough, and the thought of testing his might was rather appealing. He'd chosen to abstain from violence today for that very reason. The Red faction deserved a vacation. This was to be theirs, and it should have been before Assassin and Ryder crashed the party. Honestly, they only needed Castor and Lancer to complete the set. He was surprised the thought of them didn't summon one or the either. "Sorry?" he shrugged, and offered his most neutral expression as he, too, dragged himself upright. "I'm not interested." "What's wrong?" Achilles asked. "Think you won't measure up? I'm not trying to be an ass about this." "Bah!" Mordred snorted. "He'll knock your block off, Greenie." Ryder latched onto her words with a grin. "Is that so?" Muscle jumped in Naruto's jaw. "Damn it." When he turned, he fought Jack and Atalanta, looking at him expectantly with equal parts anticipation and excitement. Even Jan and Semiramis had ceased their bickering to observe this unexpected development. Blast it, Mordred. Now he couldn't back down here, or he'd look like an idiot. He had his pride, after all, and if he admitted Mordred was wrong, that meant he was wrong too. He'd be able to live with that, but the idea of disappointing them. In the end, Jack seized his fate when her hand tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy? You'll win, right?" "Of course Daddy's gonna win." He spread his arms and cracked his neck. "Where do you want to do this, Ryder?" "Outside of the town. Here." "Meh. Here's good." Achilles banished his armor with a grunt, leaving himself clad in a simple black tunic. "Not like there's anyone around to see, even if they do." Naruto dropped into a low crouch. "Not like they'd be able to stop us. And keep the armor. You'll be needing it in a minute." "All right." Ryder grinned and settled into a loose stance of his own. Now, dodge. Naruto barely had time to blink before Aiz clotheslined him into a wall. Laughter burst out of him as concrete crumbled against his back. He'd tanked the flying strike to his chin, a whim to see what his foe was capable of. He wasn't disappointed. Achilles hit hard, harder than he'd thought a servant could. A blazing supernova burst behind his eyes as he tumbled backward into the plaza, bouncing and skipping across the street like a flung stone. A quick flip righted his body. Another sent him surging back the way he'd come, just in time to catch the tail end of Atalanta's condemnation. "You doing, Achilles?" "What?" Ryder's voice carried even at this distance. "I just want to see if he's as strong as he thinks he is without that damn cloak." "He's fine. See, Gak?" "Sneaky bastard." Naruto grabbed him by the head and rammed him face first into the street, with a delighted laugh only a berserker could possess. Cobblestone shattered beneath Ryder's startled visage like glass, but only for a moment as the latter scissored his legs upright and drove a heel into his chin. Said heel was promptly caught by the blonde and used as leverage to launch his fellow servant into, then through, a nearby fountain. He felt a flash of pity for the sundered stone. Pity that faded when Achilles bolted upright quick as a flash, soaked and sputtering, and smiling. That was a cheap shot. All's fair in love and war. Naruto swept an arm free and tore away the ruins of his jacket. "Isn't that right?" "Ha!" Achilles did the same with his scarf, eyes alight, and "this is war." Both bounded back into the fray a heartbeat later. Naruto's next blow rang the hero's head like a bell and sent him sprawling into the street. In the same instant, Achilles cut a brutal roundhouse across the whiskered warrior's chin that sent him spinning into a stable. Little more than glancing blows, each endured the hit, rode it out, and came roaring back for more. There was something immensely satisfying about fighting someone from the Age of Gods. Not a contest to kill, not a battle for bloodshed, but a simple fight. A knockdown, no-holds-barred brawl. He couldn't remember the last time he'd had one of those. They were, the both of them, men out of time. One from an era where monsters and men roamed the earth. Another hailing from a time where the very elements themselves were bent to the will of anyone with the will and power to tame them. Someone who could take just as much damage as he could give. There was no pretense of defense here. There was no need for it. "I felt that." Achilles grinned, wiping a stray line of blood from his face. "You actually hurt me, with your bare hands. Just how much divinity do you have?" Naruto turned aside and spat out a tooth, unable to hide a small smirk of his own. "I could say the same for you. You're a tough one." "Boys, both of you," Atalanta wailed as they collided again. "Can't you control yourselves for 1 second?" "Not a chance, not now, sis." They raged back and forth across the plaza like warriors of old, not caring who saw, who would stop them. Those capable of doing so were too engrossed in the spectacle at hand to bother. They were far too invested in the outcome to dare interfere. Who could? Even the occasional passerby saw it as naught more than two men having what appeared to be a drunken squabble. And if said squabblers shattered the street wherever they went or crashed through stalls wherever they went, well, that wasn't their business now, was it? There was no rhyme nor rhythm to their attacks here. It was a test of endurance. No more, no less. Naruto grunted as Achilles hammered through his defenses and knocked the wind out of him, causing him to briefly fold over the man's arm. He retaliated by leaping up and driving his skull into the man's chin, sending him staggering away like a drunkard at last call. It would have been so easy to smash a racing gun into his chest then. Instead, he swept his legs and kicked out at his chest as the taller man fell. A startled grunt rewarded him as the green-haired warrior sailed away and crashed into a bar. "Go, Daddy!" Jack called from the sidelines. "Fight!" "Kick his ass, zombie!" Mordred cried. Naruto laughed and struck what he hoped looked like a triumphant pose, clenched fist poised in the air. Bemused blue eyes met Atalanta's emerald ones. She exhaled in a long suffering and held up a small gold flag. Just where the hell had she gotten that? For him in slow, reluctant motions. Jen waved 2 more with a bemused, almost motherly smile. As for Semiramis. What? No praise for me, he teased. The Blackett absolutely hissed. I hope he knocks out another 2. I dunno, Naruto drawled back, his voice pitched to Carrie. I think I might have knocked him out with that last one when. Sure enough, Achilles shot out of the bar at him like an arrow loosed from a bow. For his part, Naruto hung his head. Blonde bangs, shading dull blue eyes from view. Knowing his opponent? Friend? Rival? Something else entirely? Would surely try and capitalize on what he no doubt saw as an opening. Of course he would. And he caught his fist. Those same dull orbs snapped up without warning, trailing twin streaks of azure light like falling stars in their wake. Achilles swore softly. Naruto grinned. Oh, you're fucked now. In a single movement, he flipped him. A tan hand seized Achilles by the scruff of his neck, even as the other yanked his fist and the rest of him forward and over his shoulder. Achilles could fight many things, had fought many things in his life. But for all his spirit and valor, he could not do battle in the air without his chariot. He could not fight gravity or momentum alone. And so he flew headlong into the ground in a streak of silvery green, crashing face first through carts and vendors alike, before he ground to a halt. To his credit, he bolted up just as quickly. Nice one, partner. Didn't think you had in ya. Naruto, snickered. Achilles. What? He pointed downward. You've got a little something on your everything. Baffled, the young man looked down and saw. Pale, pulpy slime coated his armor, peppering his frame with bits of debris and leaves alike, alongside the last remnants of a vendor's produce. Coated from his shoulders down, not a single inch of his body had been spared the foul wrath of that most pestilent produce. It even matched the shade of his hair. Achilles wasn't pleased by that. Not one bit. He balked. My armor. My cabbages, a nearby vendor cried. Naruto crashed backward with a cackle, clutching at his sides. My ribsies! Jack and Mordred howled with laughter. Atalanta and Semiramis turned scarlet. Even Jean was not immune, nor was she able to hide the small smile that formed as the infamous charioteer flailed at his ruined armor. It wasn't damaged at all, but his pride, that was in ruins. Achilles didn't move. He blurred. Naruto! The blonde bounded upright, and his right arm swept back, ready to meet the punch he knew was coming. Achilles! A vicious crunch echoed through the plaza. Everyone present winced as twin fists collided in flawless unison. Everyone, save Semiramis. She didn't avert her gaze, and as such she saw Achilles topple to the street like a fallen tree. Naruto was only a heartbeat behind, his arm still overextended as he tumbled to the ruined cobblestones. In hindsight, one could easily see why. Each punch had collided at the same moment. Each man had thrown the entirety of their being behind that final blow. Somehow the fools had managed to knock each other out at the same time. That suited her purposes quite nicely. She'd brought Ryder here for a reason. Knowing he would challenge Naruto to a duel. Knowing it would give her the chance to further assess his skills. Knowing he wouldn't be able to refuse. Not with his little friends all but watching his every move. Granted, she hadn't expected their brawl to be quite so destructive, or to end like that, but it still served her in the end. Victory was hers. So, who won? Mordred posited. As if responding to that very inquiry, Naruto jolted upright with a gasp, staggering as much as swaggering. Semiramis nearly choked on her own spit at the sight of his smile. How? The blonde buffoon had been laid out. He shouldn't even be conscious after a hit like that, much less moving. Blast him, what was he? Immortal or something? If he could take a hit like that from Achilles of all people, how was she going to kill him? Did she even want to anymore? Victory! A battered fist pumped into the air in triumph as a surprisingly boyish grin spread over his bruised cheek. It stirred something traitorous in her heart, and she looked away. I got him! Ha! Ooh! Atalanta feigned indifference, though the light swaying of her tail betrayed her thoughts. Oh look, I think he's gone punch-drunk. Someone do something. Achilles stirred a moment later with a groan of his own. Gods, that stings. An armored massaged his jaw. Not a bad punch, brother. Brother, Naruto squinted down at him. Where'd that come from? I thought I was your rival. He still offered the man his hand. Achilles grasped it readily. Bah, don't sweat the small stuff. The legendary hero waved his concerns aside and allowed himself to be pulled to his feet. You beat me fair and square. This time. Had he really? Naruto almost wondered about that. It wasn't a real fight. Had they both used their noble phantasms and all their tricks, the battle could have gone either way. He might yet lose if it ever came to a fair fight between the two of them. Worse, someone might have seen them fight. Someone might seek to use this moment against him. That should have been a sobering realization. It should have doused Naruto's joy in an ocean of regret, or concern at the very least. There would be more battles to come. Not all of them would have a happy ending. Not like this one. Jack dove into his chest, and all his fears evaporated when he saw her smile. You won! Of course I did. Who's your papa? With a roaring laugh, the blonde swept his adopted daughter into his arms and tucked her head close to his chin, reveling in the delighted giggle that followed. Mordred chose that very moment to saunter over, not quite dragging a softly smiling Atalanta with her. Jen trailed behind them, offering her congratulations for a well-fought match. Of course, that caused Achilles to clap him on the shoulder, which meant Semiramis couldn't stand it and had to sneak a comment of her own. Naruto soon lost himself in the aimless chatter that followed, content to let it last as long as he could. This felt good, wholesome, pure. It felt like coming home. Like family. No one would touch them. He swore it. I'm not afraid of dying. Haven't been since I was summoned. Perhaps that has something to do with my class. Maybe it's lowered my inhibitions, or something. I don't know, don't really care. At the end of the day, I'm me. That's all I can be. I'm not going to turn on my friends, no matter what you say. Torture me if you want. Draw out my death. Make it last days, weeks, months. Won't make a lick of difference. I'm not going to break. I won't stab anyone in the back. I am me. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, and I'll gladly die for those I love. Over and over. Over again. As many times as I need to. So go ahead, kill me, but you better make sure it sticks. Because if it doesn't, you're gonna have a bad time. A Berserker. Revelations, Part 2. This is juvenile. Is it, though? Naruto hummed. Is it really? Semiramis didn't deign to answer Berserker's question. Rather, she regarded the strange confection in her grasp with keen eye. On some level, she knew she was being had, but she just couldn't bring herself to toss the treat aside, not after the blonde had gone out of his way to purchase it for her. It was a gift. Queen though she may be, she wasn't the sort to simply cast aside such a thing. He'd gotten it from a nearby stall in what she could only assume to be a festival of some sort. She'd never been to a festival before. Who knew Trifas held them? Still, her eyes strayed to the item in her hand once more. All pink and blue swirls, it looked like some strange swirl of cloud on a stick. What had he called it again? Cotton candy? It seemed absurd. This clearly wasn't cotton, for one. And what the devil was candy? She'd never had any before. "I fail to see the purpose of this," she groused. "Our time would be better spent conducting strategies for the war, not wasting it frivolously here." "You say that," the blonde pointed out, "but you haven't let go of your snack. Come on, live a little." Assassin sniffed the cotton candy warily, half expecting it to rear back and bite her. When it didn't, she dared to lean in and take a nibble. Her eyes widened in surprise as her lips betrayed her, a small moan of surprise leaping from her mouth. Her taste buds all but sang with joy. Sweet. That was her first thought as the sugar dissolved against her tongue. Not enough to be cloying or overwhelm the senses, but delicious all the same. Semiramis hummed in a rare moment of quiet pleasure and took a second bite. Then a third, followed by a fourth, all the while making little noises of appreciation as she ate, until quite suddenly, "Enjoying yourself." Her mouth clicked shut around the last of her treat, and she rounded on the voice. Naruto, or rather the clone he'd assigned to her for the better part of the evening, regarded her with a faintly amused expression as he leaned against a nearby wall. He didn't laugh, didn't scoff at her girlish display, didn't even mock her for it. He just smiled. That smile undid her 10 times over. Aye. Slow heat crawled up the back of Assassin's neck and into her face. "You heard nothing," she hissed. "Pretty. Sure it wasn't nothing," he quipped. "Silence. You will provide me with more of this, now?" The clone sketched a faux bow. "As my queen commands." Semiramis snarled and absolutely launched the empty stick at him. 0, 0. Jack tilted her head as she cradled her hard-won prize close to her chest. "Is it really all right for us to have this, Papa?" She hadn't done anything to deserve this. She hadn't killed anyone. She'd just walked around with him all day, playing games. Did she really deserve a gift like this? A tiny voice in the back of her head said that she didn't deserve anything. She was nothing. No one. Just a wretched little girl who only knew how to hurt. Should she give it back? "What are you doing?" And yet Naruto's hands pushed the item back into her arms when she tried to hold it out for him. "It's all yours, Jackie." A sheepish grin flashed out at her as he scratched the back of his head. "I'm sorry I couldn't win you the grand prize with my crappy aim. Berserkers can't shoot to save their lives. Maybe if I was an archer." Assassin's herd did a little flip in her chest. "No, it's fine. We love it." She grinned as she squeezed the giant stuffed unicorn in her arms. If he said she could keep it, she would. So very fluffy. Warm, too. She was going to cherish it forever and forever and ever. He'd brought and or won her so many things today that she didn't know what to do with them all. He'd even bought her a shiny new black dress that went past her knees. Papa had something about public decency when he'd asked her to wear it. Not that she knew what the word meant. Her mind was already whirling for the next source of entertainment. She didn't want this day to end. Golden eyes alighted on another stall further down the street. "Can we play that game next?" Berserker feigned a frown. "I don't know. It's getting late." "Please, please, please." Jackie latched onto his arm like a limpet. His free hand descended to ruffle her pale hair. "All right. Suppose a few more won't hurt." Yay! Clone or not, Jack knew Papa was Papa. His doppelgangers were merely an extension of himself, a way to be in many places at once. She liked that. It meant he would always be with her. Her fingers threaded with his as she let him guide her to another stand. Was this what it felt like to be loved? He'd taken her in when no one else would, offered her a home when the world rejected her. When she got bigger, and she swore she'd find a way to, she was going to marry him. No one could hurt him. She wouldn't allow it. She'd slaughter anyone who dared try. Aw, man, I got stuck with a clone. So we Naruto's doppelganger slurred the word as Mordred tugged his cheeks. Atalanta picked out the wheel one. Maim, murder, destroy. Sheesh. A wave of bitter self-loathing washed over the night of treachery as she released him and rose from her seat with a huff, feast forgotten in her anger. Clever bitch went and got one up on me. Is that really so bad? Saber fought down a flinch and resisted the urge to elbow her companion, knowing she might dispel him if she did so. Still, her anger persisted, like a petulant child forgotten at Christmas. She should have known this was too good to be true. Should have realized something was up when Berserker, damn zombie, offered to treat her to such a banquet. But she hadn't. Instead, she'd been naive. Now that damn cat was running off with the original? Hey, now. She glared bloody red daggers at the copy when he grabbed her wrist and wrestled her back down into her chair. I may be a clone, but that doesn't mean I'm necessarily a fake. That is to say, we still think and feel the same as the original, you know. We're just fragile. Yeah, but you're not the real one, she sulked. And yet, for all intensive purposes, I'm still him, the clone retorted sagely. As she looked on, he thumbed his nose. Case in point, I'm not one for serving others. But as you are now, you'd make a good king. Mordred's face turned the shade of 1,000 burning supernova in all their glory. What the hell? Don't just spit that out. I'll sock you one. You could that. He turned and began to tuck into a side of roast beef. But then who would pay for your meal? Damn it. Against all odds, Mordred found herself curious. How does that clone shit work anyway? Language. Piss off. She tore into a drumstick. You're not my old man. That earned her a mildly bemused look, but he didn't challenge her further. It's like creating a copy of your thoughts and pushing it out with a bit of chakra. The shadow clone raised a lecturing finger. We share memories, too. If one of us pops or dispels themselves, then the original receives whatever memories and emotions we were feeling at the time. Mordred perked up. That's so. She dithered, suddenly feeling more nervous than she had any right to be. Stop being such a pussy, she cussed herself out. You already made up your mind this morning. Don't chicken out now. Laying her meal down, she turned to regard her fellow blonde with a baleful growl. In truth, the growl was an act. She didn't mind him. No, if she were being honest with herself, she kinda enjoyed being around him. Just a little. All right, a lot. Besides, this was her one and only chance to get a leg up on Archer. Vow or not, she knew Atalanta would make a move soon. Someone had to. So, like the treacherous knight she was, Mordred decided to act first. Hey, zombie, she hung her head as she used the original's nickname. Come here for a sec. Hey, the clone regarded her warily. Why? You're acting weird. Well, weirder than usual, I suppose. Stupid zombie. Couldn't he read the mood here? Huh? Maybe he could? She scowled at him. Just do it already. All right, don't pout. He blew out a sigh as her hand caught his sleeve, allowing her tan fingers to tentatively tug him back to her. Without warning, Mordred pulled, harder, spinning him about in his seat like a top. Hey, blue eyes bulged, huh? Wait, what are you? Strong hands clamped down on either side of his face, holding him fast as she gazed at him. Her piercing eyes never left his. Mordred continued to peer at him, searching for even the smallest sliver of any treachery or duplicity. She found none, only honest confusion and a hint of something else. Something that made her heart race. She watched his eyes widen, saw his eyes move. He said something, but she couldn't hear him over the roaring in her ears. Never betray me, she hissed the words. Mordred leaned in and rammed her lips against his. 0. Please. This was the greatest battle of Jane's life. Everything she'd ever done had led her to this moment. Orleans was nothing compared to this. All the skirmishes she had fought suddenly seemed small by comparison. What a waste her life had been. How strange it was to actually want something for once in her life. Now that she knew what it felt like, she never wanted to let it go again. "No," her opponent declared steadfastly. "Put it back." "But it's just a little thing," Ruler begged anew, like the girl she was currently possessing. "Please?" Her foe folded both arms before his chest and held firm in the face of her pleas. "Beg all you want, you can't have it." Ruler stomped her foot. For once in her life, Jan wanted to be selfish, greedy even. A saint she may well be. Yet at the end of the day, she was but a stray, heroic spirit possessing the body of a human girl. Perhaps her host had rubbed off on her. Just a little. Perhaps Laetitia was to blame for this. Perhaps not. Who could say? Regardless, she'd made her decision. The kitten mewed pitifully in her arms, a tiny orange tabby cat without a home. A lone paw swiped at the air between the two of them. Jean cooed at it. Naruto held firm.
"Jean, you can't adopt a kitten."
"But I've already named him," she cried. Blue eyes flicked down to the kitten. Back to her. "Do I even want to know?" "His name is Sir Pounce," she declared with a triumphant cry. "Right, that does it." The shadow clone slapped a palm to his face. "I give up." 0-0. Once more, Atalanta wondered when she had come undone. Had it been their first meeting, when he'd come crashing through the trees to seek her out? Or was it some slow, insidious thing that she'd failed to notice until now? She wasn't sure, only that it had happened. She'd not been a good companion. She'd betrayed his trust when he needed her most, made absurd demands of him, proven flighty, stuffy, and outright rude. Nay, I have this dance. And yet none of this changed the awkward situation in which she found herself. Archer regarded Naruto's open palm with singular suspicion. She waited for him to pull it back and laugh, crack a joke, or otherwise tease her as he'd always done before. When he didn't, her keen gaze drifted away from him and fell upon the street itself, and the other couples congregating in the square as the sun began to set. Some swayed together with hands intertwined as a jaunty tune swept through the street. Others stood apart, some simply basked in the presence of one another, saying not a word. It would be a festival, just her luck. No wonder the streets had been empty during Berserker's brawl. Many had gone deeper into town and failed to notice him fighting with Ryder. Doubtlessly Naruto's clones were bringing Jian, and the other girls, no small amount of chaos even now. Had he planned this, she wondered? Was he capable of such a thing? No, surely not. Was this ill luck on her part? A curse of some sort? Was she destined to make a fool of herself wherever she went? Her eyes flitted to his hand again, narrowed. "This is pointless." The words escaped her before she could think to hold them back. "I can't dance." "That's all right," to her great dismay. Berserker chuckled ruefully. "Neither can I. Suppose we'll both be learning then."
Beneath her hat, Atalanta felt her ears twitch. Her tail, wrapped around her waist to avoid being seen by others, bristled at his words. By the gods, he wasn't going to let this go, was he? She recognized the mulish spark in his eye, that fierce glint of determination she knew all too well. Her cheeks began to burn.
"I'll make a mess of things," she whispered. His smile didn't waver. "So will I." Someone shoved her. Atalanta rounded on the culprit. Achilles. Ryder of Red flashed her a cheery grin and stepped back into the crowd. "Have fun, you two." Atalanta's right hand chose that very moment to betray her and grasped Naruto's palm, fingers threading between his. Archer gawped at her arm, stunned by her body's sudden treachery. "Traitor!" Naruto took full advantage of it and stepped back, tugging her along with him. "Wano, stop it, Berserker," she hissed, putting up a token struggle in his grasp. "I don't want to."
"Oh come on, He prodded. It looks fun. You said so earlier. Just for a bit.
No, it will be awful. You can't make me. Absolutely new, dear. For all her protests, Naruto still swept her away into the throng of people and drew her out into the street, heedless of the curious stares, her snarling urn. Atalanta struggled a moment more, and then, recognizing the futility of her actions, gave in. For only the second time in her life, the huntress allowed herself to be led by a man. Someone laughed in the distance, and the reluctant archer growled them into silence. You do realize that this means war, she hissed as Naruto pulled her close. He chuckled. I fought a few of those. I think I'll survive. Atalanta stomped on his foot. Berserker hadn't spoken in jest. He didn't know how to dance. Not in the least. Neither did she. Their jig couldn't even be called such. It was a stilted, awkward thing that had them tripping over one another at every turn, stomping on one another's toes like a pair of clumsy children. They made an absolute mess of things. Warriors they were, dancers they were not. Their place was on the battlefield, not the dance floor. Even as allies, she knew they'd have to fight one another eventually. The Grail demanded it. Even this second life was a fleeting one. It could only end in sorrow. So, why was she smiling? It didn't make any sense. Yet she was... You, sir, are an oaf, she said as much. Yoop! A small tiny part of her rejoiced in this, though she knew not why. There were no enemies nearby for her to be wary of, no threats to sense, no targets to eliminate. An invisible weight fled from her shoulders, leaving her feeling lighter than ever before. For the first time in an age, she felt, well, not free, but relaxed. She could breathe. See? Her partner hummed. This isn't so bad. It really wasn't, Archer thought. Not that she'd ever admit it. She stumbled and kicked his shin. Naruto yelped. Sorry, she apologized. As with all things in life, eventually they found their rhythm, if only by mimicking other pairs. Without warning, the song's rapid tempo changed to a slow waltz. Atalanta sucked in a sharp breath through her teeth when Naruto missed a step, and accidentally reeled her in a bit closer than he should. Her face bounced off his chest. She inhaled reflexively, his scent flooding her nose before she mastered herself. Somewhere above her she heard him mutter an apology. Looking to answer him proved a mistake, if only because she met his gaze. He was warm against her, his hands gentle on her waist as she rocked into him. Those bright blue orbs seemed to flicker and shift in the light of the setting sun, those fading rays catching his hair and burning through it like chastened gold. Her mouth went dry, and her vow suddenly seemed so small now. A weak and petty declaration made by a foolish girl. She'd sworn that oath to Artemis a lifetime ago. And what had been her reward for staying true to the goddess? Pain, misery, fear, loneliness. She regarded Naruto with half-lidded eyes. He made no untoward moves to her, careful to keep her close, yet also at a distance. For that alone, she respected him. He'd not made any effort to force himself upon her, as some might. Maybe he respected her vow, or perhaps he was simply giving her time to sort out her own thought. She adored him for that. No, not adoration. Not simple lust, either. Lying to herself had served no one and nothing for too long. Was it so wrong to be happy? Just a little? She'd been fighting this for so long. Atalanta was tired of fighting. So very tired of it. Forgive me. Forgive you for what? Naruto blinked as she buried her head into his chest again, not quite catching her meaning. You've not done anything wrong. There's nothing to forgive you for. Yes, there is, she said. Forgive me for being a fool. Then she stepped into him and gently pressed her lips to his.
He tasted of fire and smoke, of old secrets and promises best left unspoken. Her teeth clicked painfully against his and she winced in her pain, but forged on. She'd never kissed someone before after all, she'd sworn never to do so, to never indulge in intimacy of any sort. But now, with her blood up, her pulse pounding, and his lips on hers.
To hell with it. Naruto tried to respond tried to pull away, but Atalanta wasn't having it. She didn't want his words. She wanted him. All his words withered into a gasp when her lips brushed against his again, tongue pushing past them, questing for his. Her arms draped around his neck, pulling him closer even as she titled her head for a better angle. His hands tightened around her waist, fingers locked in place as though terrified to move. That wouldn't do. She pushed him back half a step, trying to elicit a response for him, and those fingers came alive and pulled her in, crushing her against him. Cease.
Atalanta ignored the voice.
Cease this foolishness at once, Atalanta. She felt something snap deep inside her and shoved it aside. Are you deaf, child? Still it came on. I told you to stop. Cease? Desist. Naruto chose that moment to try and pull away again. This time he actually succeeded. Atalanta tried to pursue, tried chase him, but his hands came down on her shoulders and held her fast. She cried out and struggled against him, but his strength exceeded hers. Let me go, you bastard! She shook her head, hat flying free to expose her ears. I will, he reassured her. Once you got your head screwed on straight. You're not thinking clearly. With those words, the dam in Atalanta's heart burst. All the emotions she'd worked so hard to keep in check now flowed free in a great flood. My mind's never been more clear. I'm tired of fighting this. I love you. The words tumbled from her lips before she could hold them back, leaving her feeling like an embarrassed schoolgirl. I want to be with you. Her fingers betrayed her once more and wrapped themselves in his jacket to prevent his escape. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. She nuzzled her nose against his lips, teasing his cheek as she ground against him. I want to be yours, and I want you to be mine, forever and ever, until the end of time. A strange, warm heat suffused her cheeks, and her resolve faltered as she looked away. Children! Children would be nice too. For once in his life, the chatty berserker looked at a loss for words. I didn't know you felt that way. And now you do, Atalanta growled back at him. Do something about it. Something sparked in his eyes and he drew her close. Not close enough. No! More! A tiny, keening whine fled from the huntress's lips as she grabbed Naruto by the hair, yanked him in again, and melded her mouth with his. She wanted more of this. She wanted him closer. Skin against skin. Flesh to flesh. To hold him in her arms and never let go. A burning need ignited deep within her chest, leaving Archer longing to push him up against the first wall she could find. Why had she forsaken this? She'd never known what she was missing. It was intoxicating, and like a drunkard she drank her fill, and gladly came back for more. So you've broken your vow then? That strange familiar voice came on again, whispering in the back of her head. You would forsake the gods. How very disappointing. Naruto suddenly stiffened against her, blue eyes flying wide open. Get back! A mighty palm collided with Atalanta's chest and sent her slamming backwards into the street. She barely had time to blink before she struck the floor and tumbled away. Still, she was a huntress and recovered quickly, tucking into a roll to land on her feet. Shock and confusion vied within her, warring with a strange keening pain she didn't recognize. Had he rejected her, pushed her away, and for what? Naruto! Why? Her words trailed off as she beheld the grisly sight before her. No. Naruto stood still as a statue, a look of grim satisfaction etched into his face, arms still thrust out to push her away. It was the last move he'd ever make. No. Because there was a sword sticking out of his chest. No. Her heart screamed even as she realized what he'd done. He'd sensed his attacker and pushed her away. If she'd resisted, she would have been skewered in his arms with him. No, this wasn't happening. It couldn't be. She waited for him to laugh, to scoff, to rip the black blade free from his chest and rage against whoever had struck him. It never happened. One trembling hand rose to grasp the sword, only for his assailant to hack it off at the wrist, rip their weapon free and strike again, burying it in his stomach. Blood bubbled past the blonde's lips, and he toppled to his knees, gasping for air that wouldn't come to pale lips. "Oh," he croaked, grimacing with bloody teeth. "That's not good." Someone screamed in the background. Townsfolk fled left and right, yet Atalanta heard none of them. "Thy time has come." A burning blue shadow passed over Naruto, and Atalanta beheld his assailant in all their grisly glory. Ghastly blue eyes blazed out of a hideous skull, an armored body wreathed in blue flames bearing a hideous shield. Traitorous servants who defile the purpose of this war, the being intoned. "Judgment has been passed upon thee." That emotionless visage inclined a fraction of an inch. "Thou art guilty. Thou shalt be slain by the blue, and the war will resume." Blue. She blinked at the words. Not red? Not black? What devilry was this? There couldn't be a third faction. There couldn't. "Atalanta!" Naruto grit his teeth and tried to stand. "Run!"
"No," she cried, "I won't leave you."
"I'll be fine. Go." "Nay." Assassin of Blue raised his sword. "You will not, Azrael." Atalanta lurched forward as the blade scythed back down. She tried to draw her weapon, tried to knock an arrow to her bow, but she wasn't quick enough. Too slow, just as she'd been in life. Always too slow. Never fast enough. The one arrow she managed to loose was summarily ignored as it skittered off the greater servant's shield. They didn't even deign to look at her. They'd chosen their victim, and would not be denied. No amount of shouting or pleading on her part could change that. In his final moments, Naruto smiled at her. His smile shone like the sun and shattered her heart. "Don't worry about me," he gasped the words out. "Everything's going to be all right." All right. It wasn't all right. He was going to... King Hassan's sword cut through flesh and bone. Naruto's head flew from his shoulders. His body slumped to the ground.
Atalanta screamed.
"This is a joke, right, zombie? Come on, stop laying around." "You're not dead. You cannot be dead. You just can't. You told me you were immortal. Stand up. How long are you gonna lay there?"
"Stand up and fight, Berserker."
"Please don't go." "You."
"Dance of death."
"I'm so sorry, Jackie." The words hit Assassin's little heart like a mallet. Something was wrong. She felt it the moment Naruto's hand tightened around hers, felt in the sudden pain in her chest. Someone had cut the link between them. It snapped back a moment later, but in its place, she found herself bound to someone else. That someone wasn't him. That couldn't be right. This wasn't right. She didn't want to look, didn't want to turn her head, knowing what she would find there. Some sixth sense shrieked at her, but her body betrayed her.
Jack raised her gaze, and she saw.
Naruto looked like he was in pain. No, more than that, his shadow clone was bleeding. That shouldn't be possible. Even she knew clones didn't bleed. They turned to smoke when you hit them. She'd seen it time and time again. Yet there could be no mistaking the dark arterial blood sluicing down his throat. Why? It didn't make any sense. "I'm sorry." He repeated the words stiffly, voice cut down to a whisper as he crashed to a knee. "I can't hold on. It's taking all I have left just to hold my clones together. I shoved a fragment of my consciousness in here, and it's falling apart." The stuffed animal tumbled from her grasp, forgotten in the chaos. "Papa!" He looked up, and she saw the cracks in his face. "Come here, Jack." Assassin obeyed, then yelped as he grabbed her and drew her into a tight embrace. She latched on with all her might, suddenly afraid that he might disappear. That was silly, right? Papa was invincible. Papa was immortal and untouchable. No one could kill him, right? Listen to me, he rasped into her ear, choking on every word. I'm about to vanish? No, don't ask questions. There's no time to explain. You have to be strong, Jackie. I've already bound you to Jan, so you won't disappear. She has your command spells now. One hand began to stroke the small of her back, tracing small circles there to try and soothe her. It didn't work and she began to cry. You're going to be all right. He held her tighter when the hiccups came, tiny tremors racking her petite frame. You're going to survive. But what about you? I don't matter, he shook his head. You're more important. Go find Shakespeare. He'll know what to do. We planned for this situation. No, I don't care about him. She clutched at him instead, clawing into his back. I don't want you to go. You think I do? His words rattled her and a tiny girl trembled, shrinking back before the weight of his fury. He'd never shouted at her before. It frightened her more than she was willing to admit. Papa must have realized it too, because he pulled her back in again, but gently this time, patting her head in slow, rhythmic movements. I don't want to go either, kiddo. For a moment, he sounded almost afraid. You were the daughter I never had. I love you. Jack's breath hitched in her throat. Golden eyes widened.
Please, don't go.
Naruto never answered. All that held her was empty smoke. Assassin fell face first into the ground, reaching for someone that was no longer there. Her father's warmth was gone. All that remained was cold stone and fading mist. Her lower lip trembled, harsh tears stinging at her eyes even as she fought to battle them back. Small arms closed around the stuffed animal he'd won her. She squeezed it tight, trying to find comfort in a memory. That was a mistake. It made everything worse. So much worse. Jack's entire body trembled, pupils turning to terrified slits. You said you would always be here. You lied. She threw her head back and wept. 0, 0. Well, this is unfortunate. It was with those 4 words that Jan knew something had gone wrong. Terribly, horribly wrong. The kitten wriggled free from her arms, forgotten as she watched Naruto's clone stumble and fall before her. A gloved fist ground into the street as she struggled to stand, only for his legs to buckle. And yet there was a strange, almost distant calm to it all. Even when she reached out for him and her hands passed through his hazy form. I don't understand, she chalked on the words. What happened? I felt, what did you do? I don't have time. Each of us only have a few seconds left. He muttered distractedly. I think the original did something before Assassin got him. Assassin, she blinked owlishly. But Semiramis. She wouldn't do such a thing. Would she? She wasn't the one responsible. He stumbled upright. Someone else did it. Jan darted to his side without a second thought. Strong hands seized her by the shoulders. Live, Jan. Those blazing blue eyes bored through her aqua orbs, finding her core. You have to. Do you understand? This isn't your fault. I'm sorry for this. His hands burned red as he lashed something to her very being, causing her to cry out in pain. Too late, she realized what he'd done. In his final moments, he had severed his bond with Jack and bound it to her instead. Oh, the little girl would be furious with him for this. Ruler just knew it. Yet he was still speaking, and that made the pain so much worse. Whatever comes next, you have to live. His fingers dug into her skin. Or we're all dead. Something painful tugged at her herd, a foreign alien emotion so sharp and painful that it stole her breath away. Berserker had always seemed so untouchable, invincible, even. He'd always been there with a laugh and a smile, quick to dispel everyone's doubts with a quick word or a look. He was the linchpin that held their ragtag little alliance together. Without him... Wait! She reached out for him when his form began to waver. Please don't go! I'm sorry, Jan. His fingers touched hers. I really wanted to show you. And then she was holding smoke. Jan stumbled through it, eyes wide. Ah, a tiny noise fled from her lips. In vain she knelt and tried to gather the fading wisps of fog together, but they slipped through her fingers. When she sought to hold them, she was left with naught but empty air. Surely the Lord wouldn't allow such a thing to pass like this. Surely not. But the longer she waited, the deeper her despair became. It was too much. A tiny fracture etched itself into her heart. Armored fingers ground against the stone as she bit her lip. She tasted blood in her mouth. The fracture widened into a crack, scrawling along the wall of her result. Surely this wasn't right. It could not be.
Lord, I don't understand, she mumbled, turning her gaze to the overcast sky. He was a good person. He was pure. He wanted to help people. Why have you forsaken him?
For once, heaven did not answer Jeanne of Arc. She received an answer all the same. This is the will of the Holy Grail. Jeanne balked, momentarily out of sorts. She hadn't expected the Greater Grail to answer her, much less in such a manner. Why would it go out of its way to eradicate a single servant? It was pure, untainted, not corrupt by any means. So why then? Why go out of its way to eliminate Naruto in such a manner? It didn't make a lick of sense. You will aid the blue and destroy the rest of the red faction. They have been tainted by his madness. We will start again. Her mounting fear and confusion turned to dread. Surely that's not necessary. Holy heaven, she'd gotten attached, hadn't she? She was meant to remain impartial? An idle bystander. Instead, her mind was filled with memories. Watching Mordred and Atalanta squabble like sisters. Listening as Naruto rocked Jack to sleep. Trading angry barbs with Semiramis while Achilles laughed and looked on. Sputtering when Kairi and Rum poked and prodded her like the relatives she'd never had. They weren't simply participants in the war. They were people to her. She knew little of the Black faction and its servants, but even so, she couldn't countenance such a thing. Irrelevant. The Grail dismissed her thoughts with ease. You will obey, ruler. I will not. Jeanne grit her teeth. This is madness. Pause. It is the will of the Holy Grail. Ruler bridled. Then you're wrong. You will obey. I shall not. Nothing happened. Then you will be eliminated as well. Jeanne tensed, but her body did not betray her, nor did her mind, suddenly aware of the atrocity she was being ordered to commit, turn on her as she'd feared it might. She felt the Grail's displeasure, yet the wishing device was powerless to enforce its order upon her. There was pain in her heart and discomfort in her thoughts, but it did not bind her. Belatedly, realized why. The Greater Grail couldn't force her to obey its commands.
Of course it couldn't. Why else would it summon a fresh faction to wipe the board and start over? Why not simply erase unruly servants? Because it couldn't. Once a servant was bound to a master, that master kept them in this world. Even she was using a human girl as a host. Perhaps that kept the Grail's influence limited.
If this is the God I obey, then God is dead. Flames flickered at her fingertips and her eyes blazed. With that realization, something snapped in the back of Jeanne's mind. It was her loyalty. She picked up her flag and stalked off toward the nearest explosion. 0, 0. Semiramis sensed it before she saw him stumble. The clone, no, Naruto, turned an ashen face on her, eyes wide. He didn't even have to speak. Words were unnecessary for the two of them. She knew. No. The word tumbled from her lips, the confectionery treat falling from her fingers. Someone finally managed it, didn't they? Someone killed you? Suppose you could say it like that. He slumped down against a nearby wall, eyes going hazy. I'm sorry. I don't really know what happened. The boss sent out one final burst of chakra before something got him. I don't know who, but it was someone strong. He chose to save Archer instead of himself. Dole! You do foolish things for your loved ones, Naruto coughed. Look, I know this is sudden, and it's a lot to ask, but Jack? A terrible, keening cry split the air a few blocks down. Oh bugger, that's her. Naruto's clone rasped. I bound her to Jan, but she's gotta be hurting. You're the only one I can trust with this. Promise me you'll look after her. Assassin recoiled. This was a joke. A trick. Surely. Some grand game meant to provoke her, or make her show weakness. Her pride bristles at the thought. This buffoon wouldn't fall, not like this. It was all too surreal, too sudden to be true. She didn't want to believe it. She couldn't believe it. She wanted to laugh at him, to scoff as he climbed back to his feet and revealed himself to be fine. No such thing happened. Mad blue eyes narrowed on her. Promise me, or I swear I'll haunt you. Semiramis swallowed softly. I will. She wasn't even sure why she spoke the words, only that she did. Ah. He laughed as the last of his strength bled from him. It was a soft, raspy sound. I knew I could trust you. You really shouldn't. She shook her head. Only a fool trusts a poisoner. Leery blue orbs blinked at her. I still trust you.
She snarled and spit at his feet. Why?
Because... Berserker beckoned her forward. She leaned in and he spoke, whispering softly into her ear. The words were for her and her alone. No one else. Just a single sentence. Nothing more. Her eyes widened and her cheeks flamed a bright, indecent pink as her lips parted in confusion. And then it was done, leaving him one last parting shot.
For what it's worth, I really did leave.
Naruto never finished that sentence. Between one blink and the other, he turned to smoke. Semiramis stood slowly, gazing down at the fading plume of white mist where he'd once been, and uttered not a word. She straightened her back slowly and smoothed the creases from her dress. Trembling hands flicked a stray strand of hair fro her face. What had been to her? She didn't know the answer. An ally? Enemy? Tormentor? Friend? Or perhaps... No, she told herself. It didn't matter. She didn't know. She would never know now. And whose fault was that? Please, don't go. Those words fell from her lips as she reached a quivering hand through the smoke, gloved fingers unable to bring him back. Distantly, Semiramis heard Shira's voice call to her. She ignored him. Because that's when it came. The anger. The rage. The all-encompassing fury as she realized what Berserker had done to her. She couldn't even remember when she'd started to feel this way about him. When he'd gone from an enemy she'd sworn death upon, to a tolerable ally, then this. This. She didn't even have a word for it. Enemy found. Something found her first.